The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual guests. If you're a sensitive snowflake that may get easily offended, then turn this off immediately. If you want to hear the real truth about the gun culture, then stick around. This is the Armed Citizen Podcast. What is going on, my Go Squad? Welcome to the Armed Citizen Podcast Live. This is episode number 244, I believe. 244. Today's date is Tuesday, May 31st, 2022. Quick shout out to my daughter. It is her birthday. Just got off the phone with her. So happy birthday, kiddo. We are live as always on YouTube and over on Facebook. If you're out there in the live chat, go ahead and say something. We don't know that you're out there unless you do. If you want to call or text into the show, yes, you can call or text in. Utilize the Ghost Tactical Hotline presented by our good friends Rod and Shelly Gates over at Aegis Gun Care. That phone number is 530-364-4678. If you are a veteran, really anybody, but especially if you're a veteran and you're in that hole, you're in the darkness and you're searching for that light, call me, text me, email me 24/7. I cannot give you medical advice. That could probably be a pretty decent ear to listen to. If you are looking for someone to get you towards medical advice, remember two things, guys. One, you are not alone in this fight. You have a lot of brothers and sisters out here that are willing and able to help in any way possible. And two, the world is a much better place with you in it. So please, please, please utilize the Veteran Crisis Hotline, 1-800-273-8255. Once again, 1-800-273-8255, the Veteran Crisis Hotline. We are spotlighting, as always, the United States Marine Corps. If you have any questions on what it takes to earn the title United States Marine, see the website marines.com. And as always, we're a proud member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. Please check out all your favorite 2A and pro-gun podcasts over at selfdefenseradio.net. Let's get this off of my ugly mug. We've got a couple of people joining us tonight. As always, we have our quasi co-host. No, folks, that is not an avatar, Clover. It really does look like that. Being a leprechaun, he won't blink or move for the next hour. So from the great state of Texas, the tactical leprechaun. What's up, Clove?
Yo. I don't know.
You don't know?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll come back to you here in a second.
Okay.
Before we do that, let's find out. Riding shotgun means that every week you do have a shotgun of the week. Have you chosen one for this week?
Let's go really hard to get right now, right? But let's go with an ACAR, which is a Churchill side-by-side 410. Let's go with that because our good friends at EAA who import those won an award this weekend at NRA for those. So
I saw that.
Congrats to them, and let's go with that.
That was what, the shotgun of the year?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, it was shotgun of the year, I think. Yeah.
Pretty impressive. How about that?
Right.
And joining us, ironically, he's been on many times. You guys probably know him, but he was also back when I didn't even have anything except for a laptop. And he had to come to my office, and we sat there and shared a laptop because I didn't even have a webcam or anything like that. On episode number 1 of back when it was called Tactical Tuesday. Guys, almost coming up in a week or so. That was 5 years ago, bro. 5 years ago. We have a good friend of mine, but he's also happens to be our local sheriff, Sheriff Chris Brown. What's going on, buddy?
Man, it's good to see you. Thanks, Trey, for letting me on. And I was actually, right before you said that, I was just thinking about sitting up there in the pro shop that night. Yep. And I thought, man, it's been a long time. Come a long way.
Come a long way from just having a laptop. And we're just like, I don't know how we're going to do this, but let's hit it live and let's figure this out.
Absolutely.
5 years later, go figure. Who would have thunk? But yeah, what we're going to talk about, we kind of started it last week, and the topic tonight is going to be: should teachers be allowed, or should teachers carry in school? And we kind of got on it a little bit last week after the tragic happenings in Texas. And we talked a little bit about what our schools do, and so we're gonna here in a minute we're gonna have Chris talk a little bit about how he was involved. He held a town meeting. Man, I was there. I don't know. Was that 3 or 4 years ago? Whenever that was, it was after Parkland, I think, wasn't it?
I'm trying to think, maybe 18 or 19, somewhere in there.
Yeah. And we had a little town meeting, and a bunch of people showed up, and that was one of the topics about one school in the county decided to hire private security, which I think is just fine. Another one says we don't know yet, and then ours was like, we're going to do something different and drastic, which I think is the best case. But we're going to talk a little bit about all three of those scenarios from your side, being the sheriff and all that, and how you were involved with the training and all of that. But before we do, every Thursday, Saturday, and Monday at 10 a.m. over on our YouTube community tab, we put out our Ghost Tactical polls, and we have fun with these polls, and we do different things. But let's go over these real quick. The first one was last Thursday, or actually, it wasn't Thursday. I think it was actually Saturday or something, because of the weekend I got screwed up. We were busy at work. It was 3 days ago, and it has 1.4 thousand votes. The question is, have you or will you see Top Gun Maverick? Chris, what about you?
Man, I've already seen it.
3 times.
I saw it. We went to the 7:30 showing, and I tried to talk Allie into stay for the 10 o'clock showing. Man, it was fantastic.
It sounds crazy. I'm not going to go out there and say it's one of the best movies ever made. It's easily a top 10 of my favorite movies ever made. If you haven't, do you need to see the original Top Gun? Yes, in a few ways. But even as a standalone movie, even if you didn't know a lot of the backstory, you'll be able to figure it all out. And we went last night, and I'd seen it a couple times, but went last night with my wife. Even my wife was like, "Damn, this is good." It's such a great movie.
As good as the first one was, I almost say that this one might actually have been a better film, which is pretty rare for a sequel, but I think it might have been better.
Yeah. I would agree. I even talked to my daughter, and I said, you need to go see it. And I said, it's better than the original. And that's saying a lot. But man, it's so good. It is so good. The flight sequences in this movie are unbelievable. Some of the things that these guys can do with planes in real life are incredible. So yeah. Clove, what about you? You've heard me talk about it for the last weekend, but do you plan on seeing it? I know you're a big Top Gun guy, so.
No, I mean, I was gone. It released Thursday or whatever, so I've been gone. Obviously was back yesterday, and I tried, I think 2 o'clock showings all the way up to 10 o'clock showings, and like everyone was sold out yesterday.
Yeah.
So,
we have here.
As soon as I can get in to see it, yeah, I will.
Yeah, we've got a little single theater. I don't know how many people think it sits. A few hundred.
Yeah, I bet it holds a couple hundred anyway.
Yeah, and it was packed last night, and I understand it was packed at they had 2:30s, they had 7, they had 10 o'clock the whole weekend, and I've heard
and that was pre-order.
Every single one of them.
I went in and looked at. I jumped on and I looked at. I think it was like 4 o'clock or something like that, because that was just a time that worked, right? And this was like at 11 o'clock in the morning, and it was like nothing, sold out. I'm like, well, crap, because pre-ordering the tickets just makes it a little easier. And so I went back and literally went through each time slot, and they had a showing. Apparently, it's playing on 2 screens, and they had a showing every 30 minutes, so from 2 o'clock to 10 o'clock, every one of them. It's crazy.
Getting tickets might be easier than getting 2 seats together. Let's just be honest. We saw a couple last night that was with 2 couples. There was 4 people. There was no chance in hell that they were going to find 4 seats together, so they were split up, and this other couple came in, and one had to sit in one row, and the other one sit behind them. It was crazy. You got to get there. DJ, he says, wait, teachers or movies? We're going to get to the teacher conversation. We just do our polls, and we'll get to those here in just a few minutes. But as of right now, 1.4 thousand votes. Yes is 56%, and no is 44%, which is interesting. I didn't think there's 44% of people wouldn't go see it, but I'm telling you, you need to. You need to. Even if you're not a Tom Cruise fan, he is phenomenal in this movie. He really is. He takes Maverick to a whole different direction of character, and it's it's a great movie. Now Chris has got some friends and some people in town. I'm sure everyone enjoyed their Memorial Day weekend of good food. And the next poll question with 1.4 thousand votes. What's your favorite Memorial Day food? Is it hamburger, hot dog, buffalo wings, steaks, or other? Chris, if you had to choose one, like what's the go-to grill out food for Memorial Day weekend?
Man, I like all of those, but probably steaks. Probably steaks is our go-to.
Yeah, I'm a steak guy for sure. If I had to go, I'd probably go burger next. But a lot of people, well, I'll get to that here in a second. Clover, what about you? If you had to go to Memorial Day weekend cookout food, what would it be?
As long as it comes off the smoker, it don't matter. So that could be ribs or brisket or any
brisket.
Number of things.
I could go for good brisket.
But those in the list, I'd probably say burger.
Yeah. Well, burger is leading with 43%, steaks at 32%, hot dog 12%, buffalo wings 10%, other at 4%, and the vast majority of the other, I didn't even think about until I started seeing them, but brats, because I always, but brats, yeah, I'm a brats fan too, so I could go with that as well. And a lot of people said chicken, but
again,
when I'm grilling out, I can do chicken anytime, but I'm grilling out, I need beef. I need some kind of beef on there,
anything on a grill or a smoker, except for maybe vegetables. But I'm telling you, some corn or even some.
I tell you what, I'm going to say good corn on the cob or something like that. Yeah, buddy.
Yeah.
Chris has got some potatoes going. Those are pretty good. Yeah. Anyways, good stuff. Our last poll question is exactly going to transition to our discussion tonight. Should teachers be allowed to carry in school? 89. I'm going to go ahead and say the answer of the 1.8 thousand votes. 1.8 thousand votes. 89% say yes. 11% say no. And there were a bunch of people left comments about with training. Obviously, we're not just going to give a teacher, a gun that has never had one before, held one, carried, been trained or whatever, and say, hey, protect our kids. I think most people understand that when we say carry in school, it's going to definitely be with training. PNW Woods out there says, if you don't have a 22 LR gun, are you even American? That's a good question. That's a good question. I know I do. I know Clover does. Chris, you got something in 22. I'm sure you do as well.
I've got like 4 of them. Yeah,
exactly. So I mean, that actually might be a legitimate. That might be legitimate. That might be one of the tests to before you get your citizenship. If you come in with a green card, are you willing to own a 22 LR firearm? If the answer is no, then I mean,
here's your green card. Here's your 22.
Yeah,
standard issue.
Standard issue.
Yeah, 22 firearms are typically pretty cheap, right? So kind of pull a Switzerland or something, right? Somebody gets their citizenship or whatever, or it's like, here's your 22. I love it. Yeah. Great idea.
I think that's wonderful.
Welcome to America.
I can get behind that. Yeah.
America. Jeff out there is on the fascist book side over there. It says, good job on the Murph yesterday. It kicked my ass. I'm not going to lie. A little sore. I'm just happy that I passed it. I had a guy, I put a video out there and I completed it in an hour and 26 minutes and 14 seconds. I was confused. Some people apparently, like, I took breaks in between each session, like 5-minute breaks between each thing. And I just kind of started the clock when I started and I stopped it when I stopped. And so that included all the breaks. And a guy messaged me and he's like, how long did it take you to do this? And I said, well, this and this. And he goes, your time is, you add up the time to do the events, not like how much time you take between resting and all that. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that. So my time was actually like 56 minutes. If you take, I guess I took about a half hour in, combined of like breaks in between things. So I don't know if that's a good thing or bad. I was happy that I completed it. It was fun. More importantly, it was more about getting awareness out there. And I tell you what I did find out, I was talking with Clover earlier before he came on, is I found out real quickly that I'm out of shape. And I don't like that. I don't like the feeling of not being in good shape. So I think that if anything else, it taught me that I need to kind of get serious and focused on getting back in shape, which is always a good thing. So it was fun.
We've always done that. We start the timer and let it go. We count the breaks and everything. So
yeah, that's what I did. So I did like an hour and 20. Tell you what, those pull-ups kicked my ass. Man, I used to be able to spit out 20 pull-ups, no problem. And I'm not going to lie, the last like 10 or 15, I was going one at a time. I was just like, one. All right, let's go. And I thought that the squats would be the easiest. Now understand that I can't go down into like a full like squat that people might be able to do with my knees and all that. I wouldn't be able, my knees would lock up probably. So I went about, like a 85% squat, but I'm telling you 300 squats. I don't care how you have no weights and all that. It'll get to you. Everything that they do gets to you. I'm hurting today. I'm a little bit sore. I think tomorrow might be the worst day. Usually for me, it's 2 days after whatever I'm doing. So, oh Lord, it was fun. You guys do that as a department or just for fun? Or
I haven't done it now in a few years. We've done it 4 times. And I did it mainly with my guys in Searcy when I was down there. And I did it either 1 or 2 years after I came up here. I don't know if we've got anybody down, but my old crew from Searcy is still doing it. They posted pictures yesterday, I think, of them. And it's a brutal workout. It's tough.
It is. Like I said, after I did, I was like, I'm just glad I finished it. I did all of it, and I was happy about that. So let's kind of get into the discussion. We're going to start out and in your face, son. I'm assuming that's how that is supposed to pronounce, but it says absolutely should not. The school should have a way of being locked down till emergency response teams can respond. We'll touch on that. That's one of the reasons why we have our sheriff here, because he can kind of give some background from his perspective. And every department's different. Everyone's got their own ROEs, if you will. They've got their own SOPs. But from his perspective, if we'll put the scenarios, if our local high school, one of our local high schools was in this scenario, maybe we can kind of talk a little bit about that stuff. But hey, I understand, and this is not us saying that whatever the answer is. This is a discussion. So I see your point, and we can discuss this point real quick for sure. Let's go ahead and start with this. He's saying schools should have a way of being locked down till emergency response teams can respond. And I'm going to go ahead and say this before I bring in Chris and Clover is, in theory, that's a beautiful idea. But what if that person's already inside the building before anyone knows? How do you lock down at that point? Unless you're literally talking about steel bulletproof doors in every classroom and office that electronically locked, that cannot be opened. So that person is literally walking around empty halls. That's the only scenario of locking down. Most school districts can't afford stuff like that. So I'm going to let Chris talk. I'll bring Clover in here, but Chris, from a law enforcement side, if there was an active shooter in a schools, what do you say about the schools being locked down to the emergency response? How does that play out in your mind?
So I think, and you kind of made mention of it before, and it's, I think it's important for us to always remember, like, not every school is going to be the same, right? Not every school needs the same thing. There's certainly different geographics, different demographics. There's all different kinds of things to take into consideration for that. So our high school in town, or you think about a high school in a big city, they may have 2 or 3 SROs, school resource officers. They may have 45 police officers, at their disposal literally within seconds or minutes. We have one high school in our county. It takes us 40 minutes to get there. And so, very, very best case scenario, something happens in that school and they start locking down. Maybe we've got somebody in that area, but maybe there's somebody that is able to basically have free reign of that entire school for 40 minutes until we get there. there's nothing wrong with having a lockdown strategy, especially if you can secure the building. And I think that's a good part of the strategy. But like you said, there's a lot of these school shootings up until some of the recent years happen from people that are already inside the building. And so you could theoretically minimize or make smaller, right, the number of casualties that happen or something based on first reaction. Everybody hears something, and everybody that's able to get into a classroom and lock down, there might be a lot of benefit and a lot of way to minimize casualties that way. But what's interesting, I don't think it works for every school, I guess is what I'm saying. I think it's part of the solution, but not the only solution. So if you look at everything that we do to protect our schools and even our commercial buildings from fire. So we put in sprinklers, we put in fire extinguishers, we put in during construction, everything in the building is built out of fire resistant material. Do you know how many kids have ever died in a school fire?
Yeah.
0. But we spend a lot of time protecting the buildings and the occupants from the fire. Obviously, that's important. We need to do that. But when we talk about measures that we take to defend our children from a psychopath with a gun, that looks like this. If you've got an extra police officer available, let's stick him in the school. And that really becomes the majority of the security.
In our case in town, we have 1 for 3, the elementary, middle school, and high school. So it's not like they're like in one campus. They're having to kind of, so if you're at the elementary school, yeah, it's in the same land plot, but it's not like you're right next door, to be there.
Right, exactly. And so, and look, and here's the other thing with that too. Like, the school resource officers are great. I think there's definitely a need for that. Certainly wouldn't talk down a program like that at all. But everything can be patterned, right? If you look at, so when the Uvalde shooting happened, again, I'm not going to talk about that, but when that happened, me and my patrol lieutenant were in Oklahoma for an active shooter conference where we were listening to debriefs from all of these different active killing incidents from all across the country. So that the Uvalde shooting happened in the middle of that.
Wow.
And so, like, for instance, like we did the debrief from Columbine. And Columbine, you know how many police officers responded to Columbine? 900. 900. Okay, so I mean, obviously that's everywhere from the Denver area, and then every agency around that.
Massive metropolitan area, yeah.
Right.
Plus
so,
state
or maybe it was 400, but
agencies and everything, yeah.
Right, and so the response was massive. But there was a school resource officer at Columbine. Do you know where he was? I mean, where was he when this happened? He'd gone to lunch. So that brings up, and I don't know, they didn't discuss this, and probably no way to ever know. But when you look at somebody
every day, that's very easy to pick out.
There you go. Right. So when you look at these events, I don't think it's a stretch to think, well, look, especially for the kids that go to school there or spend time there, it becomes very easy to pattern and to see weaknesses, just like inmates do in jail. Right. They know when the guards change. They know which guards they can manipulate easier. They know, which maybe cell is easier to get out of or what time it's easier to do all these things. So I don't think there's one specific answer to fix this problem. I think that there's a lot of different pieces that could go together to help maybe be a solution.
So the answer is yes to everything. I mean, a little bit of everything.
Yes.
We discussed this at that town meeting. You and I have discussed this privately. You're right. It's not just arming teachers. It's not just, we don't want to fortify our schools and make them into prisons, but there are certain things you can do to be a deterrent. And I know this is going to be something that a lot of people don't like, but something as simple as, let's be honest, metal detectors. They're not the things that you want to see, but I'd rather have a metal detector that you have to go in and out of one point to that school than building concertina wire fences around the whole campus and make it a prison. I don't want that. I want the kids to feel like they can, either at school, not at a prison. but something like the idea of a metal detector, or there's a lot of different things you can't do. And the answer may be yes, a little bit of everything, I don't know. Chris, I want to bring you in. Sorry, Clover, you're both Chris's. Clover, I want to bring you in, and he's down in Texas. And as far as lockdowns, let's not necessarily talk about teachers being armed yet, but as far as active shooter lockdown procedures, is there anything in your area that you know that schools have done the last few years for that?
Yeah, I don't think it's lockdown in the sense. I think when people say lockdown, they're thinking like all the doors lock, and you know, if the murderer, I don't like using the S word for those idiots, is already in there, then you lock him in there with everybody, or her. Let's not be sexist with this. Sure. And so that's a great point. But to my knowledge, with the term lockdown, it doesn't necessarily mean that.
Sure.
There are certain protocols, and I'm sure Chris can agree, and you know what I'm talking about. It's like, I don't really want to get into the particulars of what a lot of the schools I know, especially the ones my grandbaby go to, because I don't want anybody to identify those patterns, right?
So a lot of exactly.
Yeah,
we're not going to give away the secrets, but
lockdown is not what you think. So my wife works at a prison, and when they do lockdown at a prison, that's basically what it is. Everybody's in their cell, everything's locked. It's a little bit different when that happens in a school. And I don't think, I think the school has to identify what works best for them. To your response earlier about all of it, I think we gotta take a really hard look at all of the above. Everything needs to be on the table, with the exception of gun control. I'm okay with putting everything on the table and taking a look at it. I don't think it's as Chris pointed out, I don't think it's a one size fits all solution for any school that's out there. I think some things are going to work. The combination of certain things, let's say, are going to work better for some than others. Now, do I think that, when you talk a lockdown, I've heard him talk about sort of like a prison, where you have the double doors type scenario with a metal detector, with something else going on, right? And so you walk in, the door locks behind you, you walk through that, and if it's not clear, then the door doesn't open in front of you type thing, right? And so you're trapped basically in that. I think there's some merit to, entry systems like that. I think there's merit to one ways in, right? Like, and that could go toward the lockdown scenario in a way, right? Like, any traffic coming into the school, have multiple exits. I'm all for, emergency style exits, like in every classroom, straight to the outside, right? That's kind of the reverse of a lockdown, of course. But one entry in, you go by the administration office, the SRO desk, whatever it might be, right, in that one entry. But then when school lets out, you've got, various things, or in case of an emergency, you got various things. One of the worst things is, you look at all schools and they all have the hallways, right? I think it was maybe Jeff that was talking about more open area. And what's more open area than the outside, right? Let me get them outside. Because if you're trying to get them through the hallways, right?
Hallways are the funnel of death,
horrible.
man.
Yeah, that's horrible.
That's what it is.
Instantly get them out of the building, some type of an emergency exit. Now, where that's controlled by a school resource officer or administration, or there's certain codes each teacher puts in to do it, I don't know what that looks like. I'm also okay when we're talking about lockdowns. I mean, could there be some type of a security measure for each individual classroom or each individual teacher, right? Where that is, a hardened door lock of some kind that they have control, over, whether that's some type of a panic room closet type situation big enough to get everybody into, that is bulletproof, that is steel, that is whatever, that, you're not going to get into there, barring having, massive explosives or something like that. Again, all of the above is on the table for me, except for gun control, taking away my rights as a law abiding citizen to have and own and use what I want. That doesn't that doesn't affect the people that are committed to doing evil.
Yeah. Now, Jeff out there says locking down schools sets up LEOs to fail. It isn't realistic to be able to react effectively from outside a lockdown facility. Chris, you want to address that? Because I think that's a very fair point.
Yeah, and that's actually what I was just getting ready to say is the one thing you have to keep in mind with the lockdowns is everything that's designed to keep a person out also keeps us out. And so like I won't specifically discuss any school that we have in our district just so that they can kind of have some anonymity, but we have a way to get into one of the schools here. And so we've defeated that issue at one school. We also carry more like I'm going to say covert breaching tools that they're not really breaching tools designed to be, for covert's sake. But they're something you can easily carry on you. They're not, the size of a ram or a Halligan tool. So we have some of those. We're looking at getting some more of those so that in a situation like that, you could be able to access locks. Again, the noise isn't so much an issue as the weight, right? Situation like that, there's going to be noise everywhere. There's going to be alarms going off and everything. So hitting a door with a ram isn't really an issue. It's just a matter of actually having to lug that thing around. So, that's kind of what we do. But yeah, I mean, that's at the end of the day, if the building is locked, and I think, again, this is speculation. So I'd like to wait and see all the details. We may never have all the details from Uvalde, but I'd like to wait and see what comes out. But one of the things I have heard floating around is that they had a hard time getting into one of the metal doors because it swung toward them, and a ram obviously doesn't work on that kind of door. Not metal frame, metal door that swings back towards you. So it'll be interesting to see if that's actually how that played out or not. But it certainly illustrates the issue, like Jeff said. If it's designed to not be breached, it's designed for us not to breach it either. So it's definitely a consideration. Like I said, we have access to one school, and that's something that all of our deputies carry. We have the some breaching tools that everybody carries as well. We're looking at adding more to that to help them. But again, I go back to what I said earlier. Everything can be defeated, right? I mean, if you pay attention close enough and long enough, everything can be defeated. The theater shooter in Aurora went in, purchased a ticket, went in and sat down, and then right as the movie started, he went through one of those fire doors and propped it open, and then came back in through that fire door. That defeats metal detectors. That defeats fire doors. That defeats a whole lot of things. And I mean, I still think those are good things, limiting entry points, having ways to escape. But I think, again, I think there's no, like Clover said, there's no one size fits all solution there. You have to look at how each specific school is set up and try to set that school up for success and then move on to the next one.
Yeah. There's been a lot of talk, and it's not just in the chat, but I've heard a lot of time about maybe having off-duty police officers or deputies or even veterans. I don't know why veterans became a thing. It could be anyone, but the veteran thing is a big deal. Maybe to be a security patrol throughout the schools during the day. I actually don't mind that idea. Obviously, I would probably volunteer to do something like that. But logistically and liability, that's got to be almost a nightmare, wouldn't it, to have people that aren't sworn in, aren't so part of the school district or law enforcement at the time, to have civilians of any type patrolling the hallways. I don't mind the idea. I'm just trying to think of how that plays out. When you guys, you were a part of the decision to certain schools in our county doing certain things, and we'll keep that aside. But when you were in that room, did that come up as a viable option, is to have civilians or veterans or whatever patrolling the schools?
Yeah, and they talked about it some, but I think the conclusion is always kind of the same. Like, it's a really good idea. We like the idea. Implementing it and the logistics of implementing it become, I think, much more difficult And so maybe there's a good way to do that. Maybe there's not. We didn't have a lot of time to spend on that conversation,
Yeah.
but it's something I think at least bears looking into. I mean, you look at how we defend our politicians, you look at how we defend everything else that we hold dear, our money, our gold, our military installations. How do we defend those? With lots and lots of guns and people who know how to use them. And we defend our kids with gun-free zone signs. So,
but let's be fair with that, Chris. And in many of those situations too, this is where we talk about all options on the table. There are other security measures at play as well, not just
of
guns.
Course. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So let me go into this, and with your experience, let's just say XYZ school in XYZ city, Arizona or California or Alabama or wherever, and they have made that decision, whether it's a board decision or it's a vote, however they had to go about that. They're going to allow their teachers to carry if they choose. Not mandatory. No one's making anyone carry guns. Through your experience, because you've been involved in something like this, how from the time of inception of, yes, we want to do this, to that next year, school year, there were, I'm not going to give a number, but there's a lot of teachers that joined this, and I know a lot of them, and I shoot with a lot of them. I've helped a lot of them, and I know you have as well. How did that process go? Because I want people to understand that we're saying we just didn't vote and say teachers can carry guns and they start carrying guns. There were certain criteria. There was training, a lot of training and specialized training. Can you kind of, for the reason why I'm saying this, there might be people out there that take the idea that we use here and maybe take it to their school board or whoever it needs to go to, city council, and say, hey, they're doing this in places, it's working. Here's how they did it. So if you could, without giving the secrets away, I know there's some things you can't talk about, but in generalities, can you walk people through that process of how that evolved?
So in Arkansas, and I think Arkansas is a decent model. I think there's probably some things that could have been done better. But in hindsight's always 20/20 in that, I guess. But in Arkansas, we have a program that's run through the state called you can become a campus school security officer, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
So there is, I think it's a minimum of 120 or 160 hours of training they have to go through. And there are a couple of companies around that specialize in that training. And I've been able to, I actually know two of the guys that run probably the closest company to us that does that. And I've been able to sit in on some of their training and watch it. And it's decent training. I mean, they're good guys, and they do a good job with it. So that training though includes defensive tactics. It includes shooting. It includes debriefings on laws and use of force feasibility, case law, different things that cover, when you can use force, how you use it, what justifies, maybe less than lethal force and then lethal force. So they go through all that stuff, 120 or 160 hours here in Arkansas, and then they have to do refreshers occasionally. I will say the schools in our area that have chosen to implement that. I've been present for training for both of them. I guess the initial training for one school, and then some of the follow-on training for the other school, and then maybe some others, maybe not. I don't know how many there are. So, but for those, like I said, the training is decent training. I would like to see a lot more, but it's kind of like law enforcement training. A lot of times it's one of those side thoughts, right? Like, we know it's important, we know we need to do it, but we're busy, and we have budget restraints, and we don't have a lot of time, and we don't have a lot, like, just all these different things. So, and where do you go for reputable training, so that you're not a dumpster fire when you go out and train, right? And I think all those things are important. But again, I mean, it's the same as the police world. I would assume it's in some ways is the same as the military world, although I don't know. But I know definitely true for the police world, definitely true for the security world, probably true for the school world as well. So,
yeah, it's one of those where I know at the schools here locally that decided to adopt this during the summer months, they actually had on campus. I don't know if it was force on force. I can't remember, but they had on campus active shooting scenarios. I don't know if you guys were involved in that as far as how the on-site, it's not just faculty, it's staff, administrators, how all of that works. And then obviously connecting to the law enforcement, whether it's the local PD or you in the sheriff's department, and getting there. Obviously that you guys have to cross train with them at least a little bit. I'm assuming, at least for nothing else, communication wise, correct?
Yeah, and of course that presents a whole new set of difficulties. If radios don't mesh or something like that. And there's ways to do all of that. We need to do more cross training than what we do now. But yeah, the schools. So the schools do their own lockdowns-esque drills. They do active shooter drills. Law enforcement does active shooter training. I would like to see where the schools and law enforcement get together and do more of that. We've actually got a training like that scheduled to come up in June. So we'll be one of the local PDs, our office, and then one of the schools will be doing that joint training in June. And hopefully we'll be able to maybe do that with more of the schools. And we're working on some other things I'd rather not mention specifically. To try and kind of harden some of the schools and increase our response viability and some different things. There's and you talk a lot about schools and that's good. I think that's important. We've got, if you look at all of these mass killings, they happen at more than just schools. And so I think it's important that we don't just say, well, this is a school issue only. Say, well, look, we can make schools the priority for that, right? Because that's where they're killing our kids. But take that into the commercial world as well, because I mean, there's plenty of shootings we've had at commercial properties and
churches,
businesses and everything. Churches. Yeah.
I think for this, for me, I'm not speaking for general public or anyone else. For me, the schools is an issue for multiple reasons. One, it's our kids.
Yeah.
And one of the saddest things you could ever have is as a child die for whatever reason. It's just sad. Much less when they're murdered for whatever reason. There's no good reason. When there's something that could be done possibly. But it also is another important thing, because to me, this brings up something that we kind of touched on earlier. Clover even brought it up, is soft targets. And you even said earlier, the worst thing that could happen is having a sign all over the place that says this is a gun-free zone. You're literally inviting evil into your bedroom. I was watching, this is a long time ago, and it was one of those Barbara Walters or one of those type things, but they were in a prison. I think that max security prison in Colorado, like literally the worst people in the world go. And they were saying, the guys were like, look, I have no reason not to talk. I'm here for the rest of my life regardless. And there's no chance of parole. And they were talking about, look, if I knew that we were going to go somewhere and rob or whatever, and we knew they had guns and they were willing to use them, we're going to go find another house. Yeah. If there's a school, and let's say you have 20 to 50 teachers, administrators, or 100, depending on how big the school is, that could be at any given time carrying, I think that people say, you know what? I want to go somewhere else. If they're set on it, then they're going to go ahead and do it, because a lot of people don't care if they die. And that's another part of this, is the mental health side of things. And that's a big thing that we all want to help fix. You can't stop evil if evil wants to show its ugly face. What we can do is maybe make it harder or minimize the evil as much as we can. I don't think we're ever going to get rid of it. Clove, I know you're talking in there. Clover's been doing a great job kind of monitoring the chat. I'm sorry, guys. I'm looking at it, but I don't have time to do it all. So Clover's kind of been handling that. But I know there's some awesome conversation going out in the chat. Do you want to bring some of it up?
Yeah, I do. I mean, Chris opened the door there, so thanks for that. I know he probably didn't do it intentionally, but when he talked about this, not being a school,
only thing, absolutely,
necessarily issue, and so that begs the question, as a lot of the chat, and forgive me, I know G-Webs and Warsaw and it's been Calaveras, PNW. There's been a bunch of guys talking about
Travis P11 is a teacher, and I've been reading
Travis
stuff.
P11. Yeah, we've got
cool
several teachers out in the chat too, which is awesome. But there a lot goes into that mental health aspect, right? And so yes, I mean, can we harden these supposed targets? Yes, but as part of that everything on the table approach, and G-Web was the one that brought this up. It's like, why are we not focusing? And I agree, we need to focus here. Why are we not focusing on keeping people from getting pushed over the edge and that sort of stuff? Because I think that you have multiple levels. You've got pure evil, and then you've got people that, for whatever reason, or kids, right? That for whatever reason are just totally messed up. Maybe they were bullied. Maybe it's some
and in this
traumatic
day
has
and
happened in
age,
their life.
with social media, bullying, all of us are relatively around the same age. Chris is a little bit younger than us, but I mean, we're around the same generation for sure. Bullying back when we were growing up was something completely different than what bullying is today with social media, for sure.
And to be fair, even we fell into this trap with starting a podcast, and should teachers carry in school? We're not addressing, well, what do we do before it ever even gets to that point? What are some things that we can do, right? Why are we not and a lot of the teachers out there, PNW, Travis P11, are talking about bullying. And you're right. In our days growing up, you might have got bullied at school, right? But you go home and it's over. Or maybe you're only even bullied in certain classes in school or something like that. Nowadays, there's social media, there's everything else. You're bullied 24/7, 365, and it's out there for the world to see. So it's a way different situation. So where back in my day, father, grandfather, uncle, whatever, is like, suck it up, or the best thing you could do was punch the dude that was bullying you in the nose. That was the fix. And we're facing a much different time now. And so those things of suck it up or fight back or whatever it means just don't work. I mean, you got the situation now in school that, both the person that's stomping somebody on the ground and the person getting stomped on the ground getting the same amount of trouble, right? When a fight occurs. At least that happens in a lot of the schools around here. It's like, it makes absolutely zero sense. So, how do we address, how do we learn to identify? It speaks to a bigger, and this is where Chris brought in, and it's not just the school thing, it's a society problem. It's a much bigger problem. It's like, how do we address it? How do we start moving toward people, and the lockdowns, the pandemic thing, the last couple of years, and social distancing just made it worse. I like to think we were maybe getting a little bit better over the years, and then that happens, right? And everybody forgets how to act in public again.
And then everybody gets woke after that, and it's like,
I don't know how we address that, but I know that we have to be cognizant that that's what sets the wheels in motion. And if we can address even a little bit of that, I think we can get some of it. Because again, not all of these are perpetrated by people that are pure evil. That does exist, without a doubt. It doesn't matter what happens in their life or who reaches out to them or what kind of help they get. They were destined to commit, one of these tragic things. And it was just meant to be that way, unfortunately. But a lot of people, I think, could get the right help. And it could be, we've talked about this before, right? When you're talking about somebody's mental health, people, the general public, don't realize this, right? But I'll give a good example. This is a good example because, like, we're in Houston, right? And we're down to the convention center. My wife wants to walk. We're meeting some guys for dinner or whatever. We end up going the wrong place. We had to walk all the way back and other things. And there was about a halfway homeless looking guy that walks up and he's, I don't know, money for a sandwich or something. Well, I didn't have any money, but I was nice about it, right? I didn't just ignore him or turn my nose up or, anything like that. I think there's a certain courtesy we can extend to other human beings that's all it really requires. Just acknowledge that they're a human being. Speak to them like they're a human being. Don't be rude. Don't be ugly. Don't be snarky. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes just saying hi to somebody that you're passing on the street, right? Just acknowledging their existence. You don't know what that person was going to do to themselves or somebody else, right? Like that same day at that same hour. And that could wake them up to go, hey, you know what? I haven't had anybody that's, said 2 words to me in the last 3 months. And that guy, that restores their faith in humanity or whatever the case may be, right? It at least makes them stop and think. Our good buddy Mike with Walk to Talk America talks about that a lot. Stop and think. That's the thing. Have that pause, right? Just give people that human decency, human courtesy a lot of times enough just to pause, I think, is a big deal. But it's a societal issue. There's no doubt.
Yeah. Well, you and I were talking the other night. I don't even know how we got on. It's probably this conversation, the school thing. You and I were talking, and I made a comment on someone, and we kind of got into it a little bit. Let's just be honest. If we want to drop the gloves here and be completely honest on the mental health side, I don't care if you're law enforcement, if you're a regular Joe Blow, if you're in the military, whatever, taking another human life is not a natural act. Even if it's just for that 3 seconds, you are in a mental health crisis. Whether you're literally clinically insane or you're just having a bad day or whatever, taking another human life is not a natural thing.
Or your own.
Or your own. I mean, you're taking a human life.
I mean, let's be honest. Ancient samurai that were trained to fall on their swords were trained to fall on their swords, right?
That's right. But to make that and actually go through with that act, there is the argument that no one is in their right mind if they take a life for whatever reason, for whatever self-defense. It doesn't matter. You're not in your right mind. You're thinking different. Whether you're trying to heighten your thoughts and a lot because your family might be, you're not the same person you were 10 minutes before you did that. You're a different person for whatever reason. So yes, the mental health side of things is something, and we're very involved with that. I mean, all three of us are in our own way are very, very involved that in our community or with organizations or whatever. And absolutely 100%. Mental health, the mental health side of things is something that needs to be addressed. But once again, you're talking about the way, whether it's media or just people in general, when you hear mental health, it's almost like the scarlet letter. No one wants to talk about it. Either they don't understand truly what mental health issue, they don't understand it, or they still think that it's this thing. And you brought up Sedini and Mike. Mike from the very beginning has said, I want to make talking about mental health as easy as talking about a common cold. No one cares about, I had a cold or I got the flu. But you say I'm feeling drained. I'm mentally not there. Whoa. We want to talk about that for whatever reason. I don't know why. People don't want to talk about their own mental health because they're afraid of getting that scarlet letter by society. So yeah, I agree 100%, Clover. Mental health is definitely something that needs to be addressed. I think that schools need more than 1 or 2 guidance counselors. I think that schools need to be able.
Well, and let's be honest, schools need good teachers. I mean, we've got some good ones out there in the chat.
Our schools should be cathedrals. They should be, the buildings should be secure. They should have the best teachers in the world. And that means you got to pay them. Unfortunately, that's just not the way it works.
But and regardless of the pay, right? When I say good teachers, I mean teachers that are compassionate, that genuinely care about their students, and it's not just test grades or them getting through a job, right? And Chris will agree with this. This is part of the argument a lot of times is made with, law enforcement and defund the police or whatever it might be, right? There are police officers that are passionate about doing their job and helping people and protecting people and all this stuff, right? Law enforcement officers, I should say. And then there are those that it's just a job. It's a paycheck to them. Sure. And teachers are the same way. Absolutely. And we've got to get one of the solutions to this. And again, from PNW to Travis P11 to any of the teachers that might be watching this, I'm likely not talking about you, but you got to agree and they know it's true that there are teachers that are there just for the job. So identifying problems with students, right, and then trying to approach that student or get that student help or whatever might be, and stop it before it ever gets to the point of bullying, right? Before it ever gets to the point where there's any kind of major damage done. Maybe you help a student as a teacher, you help a student get introduced to a new after school program, right? Or extracurricular activity that they may enjoy that helps them build friends, that helps them build confidence, right? You see where I'm going with this? I think that's a big deal. And that has nothing to do with the pay grade. It has to do with the type of human being you are. And it's the same with law enforcement. If you're there just to get a paycheck, then you're not extending your appreciation for humanity into every facet of your day-to-day life. And when we do that, I think that becomes dangerous from a mental health aspect, not only from the standpoint of other people but our own.
100%. Chris, I want to bring you in and talk about maybe the mental health side of things, but whether it's your perspective as law enforcement or just being a dad of kids that are in school. Let's put it this way. What is something that we could do as a community, whether it's here or anywhere, that could help the situation that isn't going to cause for attacks or, more funding? Is there anything that you would recommend, or as a dad or as the sheriff, what is something that we can do at home? Because we talk about mental health in schools. A lot of this could be changed at home, being better parents, being more involved with our kids' lives. You honestly see a lot of the dark side of how kids are raised, as a lot of law enforcement officers are. You see the dark side, the underbelly of what some kids go through at home. Is there something that you sit there and say, I'm never going to let that happen to my kid, or something that you think could change from the home perspective?
So yeah, we could probably spend an entire hour just talking about that. So let me try and condense it into just a couple of minutes. Maybe two different paths though.
Okay.
And so I think one path, and this is actually the second path, but I'm gonna talk about it first. Is teaching your kids how to respond in an event like that, right? So maybe doubly important if you carry a gun, or you might be the actual one to move forward and respond to a situation like that instead of trying to move away from it. You need to prepare your kids for, life is not a bed of roses. It's not all rainbows and unicorns. And, if something happens, this is the response you need to have. The general response that they've taught in schools for a long time is run, hide, fight. I've not ever liked that terminology because I think if you hide, you are basically, at least what I have in my mind is if I'm hiding, I'm playing something like hide and go seek, right? I'm literally just waiting to die. I found a spot to curl up and I'm just going to wait there until somebody comes and executes me. And so they're switching some of the vocabulary, and I think that we can use that vocabulary at home. They're switching that to escape or evacuate, either one. So evacuate, evade, which I really like. So evacuate, evade, defend, right? So if I can evacuate, if I can get out of the building, that would be the best option most of the time. If I can't do that, let me figure out how to actively evade the person who wants to be there killing. And then if I can't do that, I need to figure out how to defend me and the people around me as the last resort. And so I like that vocabulary a lot better, and I think we can teach our kids and our families some semblance of that. So I think you have the preparation piece on that end, and then I think the other piece that goes with that, as parents, we are, I want my kids to experience hurt. I want them to experience pain. I want them to experience joy and happiness and I want them to have the full spectrum, because I don't want any of those emotions to be a surprise when they get into the real world, right? So just like when we teach shooting or something like that, we teach people how to shoot from every position, because we don't want the first time they're in a position where they have to shoot like that to be when it's for all the marbles. So same thing with my kids. I want them to have all of those good experiences, but I also am not going to allow them to have very much privacy. Our kids aren't going to be allowed to have a phone until they start driving. And when they get a phone, we're going to go through it. We're going to control what's on it. We're going to control what they see. It's not going to be in their room at night, where if they are getting those texts, one, we'll see those texts and we'll see those messages. But two, even if they have figured out how to hide it, right? Because I was good. I hid stuff from my parents when I was young. Even if it is hidden, in the very least, it's outside their room where they don't have access to it when they go to bed. And so the last thing that they see is not going to be a hateful message from somebody or something like that. So I think it's a combination of trying to safely expose them to things and being just invasive enough to protect them the best you can until they become old enough to figure out how to handle that for themselves and be mentally competent enough to be okay with it. I think Jordan Peterson puts it really well. He talks about, if your kids are doing dangerous things safely, that is where they learn, that is where they grow, that is how they learn how to be good adult human beings. And so we need to nurture that while protecting them from this side over here as well. And that's the trick, right? It's a lot of hard work, which is probably why a lot of parents don't do it.
There you go.
A lot of them try, right? It's not for lack of they don't try, but good Lord, look at inflation and the gas prices and everything else.
Having to work 2 or 3 jobs. I mean, there's all sorts of there's all sorts of variables but not everyone lives in the Cinderella Cosby world, Right.
But I'll give, we talk about, you talked about earlier when we're talking about, arming certain people in the school, right? Be teachers, or if there's not enough teachers, maybe a veteran, or maybe this. Same way can happen with mentorship. I mean, maybe you got neighbors that are older and, they can, watch over the kids, take care of the kids while you're at work, right? Their moral code, whatever you want to call it, right, aligns with you. You don't got to worry about, indoctrination or anything crazy like that going on. Maybe there's an uncle, maybe there's a family member, whatever it might be, right? There's potentially solutions, and as hard as it is to say, I know a lot of people, this comes into when we tell people about, let's say, California, right? And it's, well, you need to move out of California. Well, here's the thing. If you got a situation where there's issues with your children, maybe you need to change your lifestyle. Maybe you need to look for a 1-bedroom apartment that a family of 4 moves into, if that's cheaper than the house you've got. Or maybe you need to look at selling the vehicle you've got and maybe buying something that's just good enough to get you back and forth to work every day, so you omit that car payment. Maybe you've got to make some hard choices for the sake of your children. And that's called being a parent. Unfortunately.
And it might also come down, if your kids are spoiled, take away some of the stuff that they're spoiled with and let them understand that there is another side to, you think you've got it bad. Let's take away all your phones. Let's take away all this. We used to tell my daughter, I said, and my daughter has a very kind heart and got a very positive vibe and soul. But we had to tell her one time, I said, have you ever noticed that there are kids that wear the same thing to school every day? Did you ever wonder why that is? And, I said, look, as bad as you think your life might be, there's always someone that's got it much, much worse. And having kids being able to see bigger picture, the hardest thing about kids is when they lose their innocence. And that's one of the hardest days for parents, because I love when kids are free and they don't know what's going on in the world, because they're free. They're truly free. We say we're free, but we're not free. We have mortgages and payments and we have jobs and all this stuff. 10-year-old kids are truly free, and it's a beautiful thing. I know, Chris, you've got to go here in a minute. I have one more question for you, and I don't want to put you on the spot. This is going to be in generalities. There have been reports, whether or not they're legitimate or not, officers being outside for, they say, an hour. I don't know the validity of this. Just going to throw this out there. An hour before going in, or some of the police officers going in to get their kids and not worrying about the shooter and all of that. I want you to talk about your guys' training and all of that. Kind of let all of us in, because every department has its own procedures. It has their own rules. And it might not be the rules that you make up as a sheriff. They might be state or federal laws that you have to abide by. When it comes down to an active shooter, whether it's a school, Walmart, a church, wherever, whatever, can you kind of shed some light to people as to, are there certain procedures that law enforcement officers cannot enter until XYZ happens? I mean, obviously there's something there, because I understand the sentiment of there were police officers there. They stood there while this happened. I'm not taking their side, guys. I'm just saying we don't know what it was. So is there usually some laws that you guys have to abide by to make this legally kosher or whatever?
So, yeah, and it's going to be interesting, like I said, to see where the truth actually winds up, and we may never know what that looks like. Go back to just a minute, for just a minute, to Columbine, right? So at the time, Columbine, the standard operating procedure at that time was to surround and wait for the SWAT team. That was how everything was done. And so, when Columbine happened, now there were people, what most people don't know is there were police officers engaged in a shootout with the two suspects, and I won't ever say their name.
Sure.
But there were police officers engaged in gun battles with the two killers, literally in less than 5 minutes from the shooting started. Right. But standard procedure at the time was to surround. And so when they retreated into the school, the police officers did what they were trained to do at the time, which was stay outside and wait for the SWAT team to go in. And so Columbine basically ended that era, right, of the surround and call out technique. And they moved to, okay, well, hey, we can do small teams, patrol officers, and then like small unit tactics or small team tactics, right, where you basically need a minimum of like 2 or 3 people to do an entry. And so they kind of moved into this phase where they would say, okay, well, look, when you're on the way, wait for 1 or 2 other people and then make entry as a small unit. Sure. And that has kind of been the standard for the last, certainly was the standard when I got into law enforcement in 2008. The standard response or the new method, which I think is the proper method for maybe the last 3 or 4 years, has been solo response. So, and that's less applicable in town, right? Because in town, chances are you're going to have 2 or 3 people there literally within 15 or 20 seconds. So, while you're putting on a vest, while you're getting a rifle, chances are there's somebody else showing up that's doing the same exact thing. And so small unit tactics are still the preferred method when feasible. But when not feasible, we're teaching solo response now. So when you get there, at the school in our county that's a 40-minute drive from everybody, if you get there by yourself, and the next person is not 10 seconds away, you're going in by yourself. As techniques and everything change, I'm sure that will continue to be upgraded and upgraded. My guess is that we'll find at Uvalde, they probably didn't truly just stand and wait outside. I don't know that, and if they did, my goodness, they shouldn't have. But like I said, we were at this active shooter conference. We got to hear how the media portrayed a lot of things. And look, not saying anything bad about how those were portrayed, because maybe all the information is not available. Maybe they just don't have access to a lot of it, whatever the case may be. We may never have, and that's why I keep saying we may never have the whole truth over what really happened. There's information from Columbine that was shared with us at this conference that will never be shared publicly. And we were told that it will never be shared publicly because they are afraid that people might use that information to carry out another attack. And so there will be things that most people never know about these attacks, and for good reason. I'll say this, and I do have to go, but my phone's also about to die because I don't have an outlet out here with me. But I'll say this maybe in closing, and then I'll let y'all have it. There was a study that came out. I was just reading the other day, and I thought Rob Pincus is the one that posted it. And I went back and looked earlier today, and I can't find it anywhere, so I don't remember who posted it. But it was a comparison of the number of casualties when a defending person was present, or armed person was present, versus when an armed person was not present. And the average number of casualties, all right, so the average number of casualties when an armed person was not present was roughly 40. Okay. I mean, you think that is a massive number, massive number. And that doesn't include that's not only deaths, right? Not only murders. I mean, that's injured people and everything.
Yeah. Casualties being injured.
But 40 casualties average. Yeah. Average number of casualties when there is an armed person present when the killing begins, 4. I mean, if that doesn't solidify the argument for having armed people present, certainly not the only solution, right? Certainly not the only conclusion, but certainly a large piece. If you're talking strictly about limiting casualties, I think that is a major game changer. Yep.
I know you got to go. You got people there. Thanks for taking some time out to have this discussion with us, guys. I saw Jeff Chris out there says, "Can we borrow your sheriff?" You got a good one. We do have a good one. We're very lucky to have Chris here. We're very happy that he had no one running against him this year. So we've got you for a few more years, hopefully for as many as you want to be here. Yes, we are very lucky. And I'm lucky to call him a friend as well. But yeah, Chris, thanks for coming on. God bless you guys, and hope you guys stay safe. I know that in our community is a small community, but it goes from the county goes from about 20,000 to about 200,000 on holiday weekends. And I know that you had your hands full this weekend, so thank you. I'm glad you guys got safe. Hope there was nothing crazy that happened. But yeah, thanks for coming on. Thanks for kind of enlightening us on some things. Anything that you want to part with? Anything? Go for it.
I think probably the biggest thing I can leave you with is, if you're going to carry a gun, and I'm of the opinion that if you are able-bodied and you are willing, you should carry a gun. You should carry it on your person. You should carry it all the time wherever you can. I'm going to leave you not with my words, but with the words of Scott Jedlinski, Modern Samurai Project, and that's: be good, stay safe, and get training.
Like a t-shirt.
I was gonna comment on that before you left and say that, be good is at the top, and that's because that's the most important thing. Not just be good in terms of like being a good shot. I don't think that's what that means. It's like be a good person.
No, you're right.
Be a good human, and be good to others.
Absolutely.
All right, Chris. Thanks, brother. I'll talk to you soon. But thanks for stopping by. Say hi to everybody for me.
Will do. Thank you, guys.
All right. You guys be good. Yeah, it's always great to have Chris, because Chris is obviously the sheriff here, but Chris is unlike a lot of sheriffs. He's very active in the two-way side of things. He was the first sheriff in the state of Arkansas that, before the state adopted this, law that we're not going to enforce any anti-two-way laws, he came out 2 years ago and said, as long as I'm sheriff, I will personally, as the sheriff, not enforce any gun control in our county. I personally will direct my deputies that anything that he deems is unnecessary gun control, he will not enforce in our county. He took a lot of heat from that, but he also started a wave here in Arkansas, which ended up being a pretty cool thing. So yeah, mandatory carry, super chat. Thank you very much. Appreciate you, brother. It's great to have him, because he brings a difference. He is a dad of school kids, but he's also the sheriff, and he's one of the few sheriffs. He trains a lot. Like, he on his own time will go get training. He does. He requires mandatory firearms instruction for his deputies, and they have to go to a certain training. They have to shoot so many rounds above and beyond what the state requires and all of that. So he's very much a pro two-way pro-gun sheriff, which is awesome. I love that. We don't have to go if we don't want. I know there's probably some stuff that we need to catch up on in the chat. Clover, is there anything that you need to bring up that I might have missed that we need to probably discuss?
Well, I don't know that there was much out there in the chat on this, but it started to kind of get down that rabbit hole a little bit, and that's the media. So one thing that has changed, like, oh, why is all these mass murders happening or whatever? And so, well, part of it was the media approach. It's the 24/7 news cycle. It's if it bleeds, it leads. And so if we don't change that by tuning off, this is the problem I've got, whether you're talking about a YouTube channel, whether you're talking about it doesn't matter who it is. If it's sensationalized, howl at the moon, fear mongering, over the top, turn it off. Don't even watch it. And when they start getting less views, whether that is cable news or the internet, they start getting less likes. But the problem is, again, it goes back to a society problem where and most of the folks in this chat ain't that way. I ain't talking about you guys, but society is. And, they'd rather watch the train wreck, right? They want to know all of that. So that's first of all, that's how we can control that, is to be better people and say, look, I know what's going on. Some crazy person murdered some people at a school, right? That's all I really need to know. That's all I really need to know. I don't need to know what the mainstream media outlets are going to give you, which is every tactic the police used, every door that was locked or unlocked, the color of underwear he was wearing, what his next door neighbor said about him, whatever. I don't need to know any of that to know the news. The news was X number of people were murdered today at X location. That's the news. And that's the way it used to be reported. Now it stays in the cycle for weeks and weeks and months and months and months. And don't think for a second that what they put up and how it's portrayed is not tied to some type of agenda. Because at the end of the day, not even a political agenda, right? In the case of, let's say, a YouTube channel or something like that, a business agenda. At the very least, it's tied to a business agenda. And so that's a road I wanted to go down. It's like, why can't people, I get, what Chris said, we're in a day and age where not only do they start throwing out information that's not accurate, they have people that come in and speculate even more things on top of the information that's not accurate. Then by the time the accurate information comes out, nobody is paying attention to that, or they only remember what was said 24, 48 hours after it happened. So shut your pie holes, media, for a few days, except for reporting that it happened. That's fine. That's fine. Report that it happened, and let's wait a couple of days until some more solid information starts to come in. But we've got this rush, again, where we're talking mainstream media or YouTube channels. We've got this rush that we've got to go live, and we've got to go do it now, and and the tragedy happens, and the news crews are almost there before law enforcement even responds. That's how crazy of a society that we live in today. When we talk about it bleeds, it leads, and getting stuff out there and getting it on the media. And it's because of people. It's because of society and craving that kind of crap. So stop it.
I want to touch on something. This might be an unpopular thing to say, but and if it pisses you off, then you're more than welcome to unsubscribe from my channel. But most of you that know me know that I don't hold punches back. And what you brought up in different YouTube channels, it happens on our side too, guys. Let's not make the mistake that the two-way community is null and void of the fear mongering. And I will say this: there are some phenomenal people out there that are doing phenomenal work for the two-way. G-Webs is one of them. There's a lot of them. But I want you to do this for me. I want you to think about who you go to, what YouTube channels you go to. When you think of two-way information, who you listen to, who you trust. And I want you to look at their channels, okay? And I want you to look at the subscriber count of their channels and ask yourself, where were they 5 years ago? What were they doing 5 years ago? because many of them were doing what everyone else is doing. They're doing simple gun reviews. They'll do an occasional live chat, just trying to engage. And oh, by the way, here's a dirty secret to gun channels. If that's what you do, you don't grow. You have a great following. You have a great loyal customer and consumer. I love my guys. I wouldn't trade them for the world. But if what you're after as a content creator is numbers, there's only one surefire way in the gun community to get surefire numbers. It's to be the fear mongering, the ATF, the government's coming for your guns, scare you, and then they'll call, and they're going to guise themselves as the 2A watchtower.
Whatever. Yeah. And that goes the same for mainstream,
because they don't give a shit about your rights. They don't give a shit about anything. They're in this because there's money in subscriber count. There's glory in subscriber count. These people that you look at and trust as these are the people that are leading the 2A fight don't give a shit about
the problem is they're not leading the 2A fight. The people that are leading the 2A fight, and I'll have a video, by the way, dropping Friday with some women that are actually leading the 2A fight. The people leading the 2A fight, the Edgars in California, in Colorado, the Tonys in New Jersey, right?
Absolutely.
Those folks, they are, I wish they got the exposure that the Howl at the Moon, coming for your guns, compensating, shall not be infringed people get, because those are actually the people doing the work, and those are the credible sources to get your information from the folks on the ground. Another dirty secret when we're talking about YouTube news channels or 2A channels or whatever you want to talk about, vast majority of them get their information from 3-letter organizations. And most 3-letter organizations love whipping people up, because what does that do? It opens up the checkbooks.
Membership
opens
drive.
Up the checkbooks. So follow the money, just like anything else. I'll say follow the money. And that goes, let's not pick on just YouTubers. Right side of the aisle or left side of the aisle. That works, as I said.
The media has to sell commercials. Absolutely.
They did not, the YouTube, the online community that does that stuff, they're not doing it because they come up with it, right? It's not some magic recipe that one of them figured out. The media has been doing it. The mainstream news medias have been doing it for years, whether that's newspaper, whether that's, cable news, whatever, has been doing it for years. They just took that textbook of it bleeds, it leads. How scary can we make this sound? Let's throw it up there and people will flock to it like moths to a flame. And they do. And that speaks to what we were talking about earlier with mental health and everything else. One of the best things I could have done that gave me much more perspective and made me, when we're talking about a lot of these different issues, a more positive person with my outlook and everything on it, is I was consuming between talk radio and cable TV and that sort of stuff. I was consuming hours of that crap a day. And I quit for close to a year, maybe a year. And you know what? I quit. I tuned all of that out. I just caught some headline stuff here and there via a few websites on the internet. And not only did my mental health improve, my physical health improved, my outlook on life improved. But you know what? The world did not end. The sun still came up every single day. And once you realize that, you know what? Life goes on regardless of what the Yahoo talking heads, wherever they may be, say. Once you realize that, once you have that awakening, then you become just a much happier person. You become a person that can, I don't know, it's life changing. That's all I can say.
We unplugged October of 2018 from satellite/cable. We haven't had, we have our streaming services, absolutely. I haven't sat down and watched the news since October of 2018. Now, if I hear something is going on, I will turn the TV on at work or something and just kind of catch up. Hey, what's going on? But I unplugged. My wife and I unplugged in 2018, and you're right.
And when
ignorance is bliss sometimes. Let's just be honest.
It is. But when you do decide that, okay, there's something going on, I need some information on this, I want to be aware. And this is another thing that people fail to do. They'll go to one source and they stop. Quit with that. If you're interested enough to know what's going on, then be interested enough to follow it through until you can find the truth. Because just listening to one perspective, I can guarantee you nowadays, and everybody out there, search your feelings, right? To quote, you know it to be true, right? Not to quote Darth Vader or anything, but search your feelings. You know it to be true. If you're only consuming one source, you're not getting the truth, period. And you may have to go to a complete lefty wacko website in order to piece together what is actually the truth.
Well, that's typically what I do when something is going on. I say, hey, have you heard about this? You heard about this? No, I'll go find out. I'll turn on Fox for 5 or 10 minutes, and I'll turn on CNN for 5 or 10 minutes, or MSNBC. I'll turn all of them on for 5 or 10 minutes a piece, because somewhere in the middle of all 4 or 5 of them is somewhat the truth, and so, yeah, you're absolutely right. Don't limit yourself to one source, good or bad. Be able to hear all sides, and then come up with your own ideas of what really happened, and all of that. Yeah, I agree as far as just not just being pissed off at the world all the time. It's amazing what happens when you just unplug for a while. We've done it now for 4 years, and like I said, we have the streaming services, but none of them are news services. I don't watch the news anymore, and I don't worry about watching the news anymore. Go ahead.
If you don't do this, Chase out there is mentioning it, but he's talking about foreign stations.
Absolutely.
And nowadays with the internet, it's easy to get the foreign perspective. I'm going to tell you right now, a lot of times you can go through all those multiple sources and form your own conclusion. And then when you land on a foreign source, you're like, okay, I didn't even have to go anywhere else. They nailed it perfectly. Why? Because they have no skin in the game. No skin in the game. None.
Yep. It's interesting. Al Jazeera has changed dramatically over the years. Early on in the GWAT era, Al Jazeera was interesting to watch because you were getting their perspective of us being there and their perspective of what was happening in the world. It was very, very interesting. I enjoyed watching Al Jazeera a lot. I learned a lot, if that makes sense. From how they think and how they perceive certain things.
Yep.
Which is really cool. But yeah, BBC, all these different, absolutely. Like you said, they have nothing involved in this. So I tell you what is, and I understand Al Jazeera is I get that, but I'm not talking about mandatory carry. I'm not talking about using them as my source. You utilize that as, dare I say, reconnaissance work. You can watch that and see how we talk about how our media presents news stories to our people in a corrupt and manipulative way. They do too, but it's nice to see. Nice is maybe not the word, but it's interesting to see how they manipulate their masses.
Yeah.
How they propose the same news story. If CNN and Al Jazeera are talking about the same thing, let's say it's a bombing in Paris, that neither one of the CNN or Al Jazeera has any skin in that fight. CNN, BBC, and Al Jazeera, they're going to cover it 3 separate ways. And it's interesting to see how different cultures and different media, because every media is different. Some are controlled by the government, some are not, some are puppets of the government, or whatever. It's just interesting. It's interesting. I agree with Chase. BBC and Reuters for sure. Yes, those are two of the more reliable, as far as being consistent. Every news source is going to have their hiccups, and everything's going to be self-serving at sometimes. But yeah, a lot as far as U.S. stories, I agree. Maybe sometimes check out some forward sources, because they're not answering to anyone here. So that's good. That's a good point. Aussie. Oops. We got a second Aussie out here.
We do.
Domestic news in Canada has one major online national network not taking money from the government. They are targeted for lawfare, physical abuse, slander, and outright internet censorship. So Chase says he does check in from time to time to Al Jazeera. I'm not saying make it your news source, but
no, we've already established that. Multiple sources.
What was that? There is it's in the last year or two, there's another news, it's more of an internet based news source. Can't remember the name, what they call it.
Newsmax, maybe.
No, that's not it. It's literally supposed to be the closest thing to non-partisan news.
So interestingly enough, there is with the NRA and the protesters and things that was going on this weekend, right? There was two guys. One of them had like a cell phone, the other had kind of a fancy microphone set up, and they were just interviewing people and doing things, right? And so I walk up and ask, because I was curious, and they're starting a news channel. And so I was like, right on,
Okay,
cool. Turn the cameras on, get it done, not a problem. And we had a conversation. They seem to be, pro-gun. They seem to be pro-gun. And so I was like, yeah, they were like, I was like, you didn't get into this press to the NRA, and they were like, no, we don't know how to do that. And, we're just trying to get the channel going. And I'm like, well, here's my card, man. Hit me up. Thanks for turning on the camera and doing stuff and getting information out there. Yeah, I agree with Vandercourt Carey. I don't like Newsmax either. It's way too right slanted for me. I just brought it up. I thought that might be it. But yeah, I thought it was cool to see, the start of what might be the next big news thing going on.
That is kind of cool. I'm trying to find, this is going to drive me crazy, but a lot of people have been talking about it, and apparently it's one of those that
Sky News. There's a Sky News. It's out of Australia.
No, this is a US based.
Yeah.
Golly. Obviously,
The Onion.
Yeah.
The Onion's hilarious if you want to watch some Onion.
I haven't heard of that. I don't know. Anyways, I'm looking it up here and I can't find it, but and it was one of those things where someone was talking about it not too long ago, and they're saying that they've gone away from Fox News and they've gone away from this, that, and the other. That this is actually one of the,
I don't think there's, yeah, there's
can be.
There's very few, if any, sources out there anymore, and this is the problem. That just reports the news. And even you and I have fallen into this trap when we have, turned on the camera, the microphone, done a podcast, right, to talk about something or do something. It's very hard to do. And until you create content and you get online and stuff like that, you don't realize it. It's very hard to talk about something and not give a slant or, see things from a perspective or whatever the case may be. It's very, very hard to do. But I would love to see, and it won't catch any traction. That's why you won't see people do it. Let's be honest. But I would love to see, like I said, a news channel where people come on and it's like Dragnet, right? Just the facts, man. Right? It's like, this happened today. This is what we know. Next story.
Yeah. G's asking a question. I'm gonna go ahead and put the link out there because instead of emailing him, G, if you want to jump in, feel free. There's the link in the chat because I don't know what you're talking about. He says, off topic. In a nutshell, what feed do I point to Roku? Is there a YouTube feed or do I need to create something? Roku is basically an app-based TV. We have one. And you have your apps like YouTube. You have your apps like Netflix, Prime Video, Hulu, all of those things. It's an app-based TV. So there is a YouTube app on that. So I mean, I might be misunderstanding what he's trying to ask, but the links in the chat there. G, if you want to join in, it's a lot easier doing that because I can control who comes in than emailing it. Ozzy out there says, I'm not big on labels and am conflicted on many issues, but trying to find anti-war, classic liberal, libertarian. It's just be anarchist or minarchist. I don't know what the minarchist is.
Anarchist. Yeah, viewpoints. Yeah,
I know anarchist, but I don't know what minarchist is. I don't know. I haven't heard that term before. Viewpoints are hard to find. Classic liberal. That's interesting. Classic liberal doesn't exist anymore except for a few people. People hear me talking about Tulsi Gabbard and people are like, oh my God, you're supporting a Democrat. Let's be honest with you. Tulsi Gabbard's a Democrat because she grew up in a state that you had to be Democrat or you stood no chance whatsoever ever being elected for anything, including like freaking JP. Let's be honest. John F. Kennedy would be a Republican today if he was still alive. So classic liberal is almost what the moderate conservatives are these days. Let's be honest, the classic liberal. So yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Not quite on the social
level. No, I'm just saying it's closer. I'll put it this way:
they're closer than
a classic liberal is closer to a moderate conservative than they are to current liberals today.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Yeah, they've shifted the window so far at this point. Yep.
He's saying for setting up his Roku channel for the Daily Gun Show. I have no idea what the hell you're talking about.
I don't Roku, so I can't help at all.
I have a Roku TV, and it's literally I push the YouTube app, or I push the Netflix app, or I push whatever,
or I download the app I need. That's it.
Right. That's it. I have no idea. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, the whole labels thing. There's a lot of talk of the labels thing, and this is one of the things with the protesters this weekend. I noticed they said they were hollering. One of the things they were hollering was, how could you be pro-life and pro-gun? And I'm like, what? And I didn't say this back. I didn't engage, right? But that was one of their chants. Sure. How can you be pro-life and pro-gun? And I'm thinking, well, first of all, how do you know I'm pro-life? Right? It's like, did I ever tell you I was pro-life? Have I ever said? I've had that the abortion conversation. I've had this before on some chats, and I'm not going to open that can of worms here. But how do you know, right? You're yelling over their protests, and you think, but it's because I'm pro-gun, I'm pro-life. It goes to that labels thing.
Oh, right? Because because that conservative platform is universal, and everyone buys into that. Yeah, exactly.
Just stop. People are individuals. Quit with that crap. Quit with the labels.
Yeah. We've got a few minutes if you want to talk a little bit about the weekend. We never discussed NRA, but if you want to talk about NRA, and obviously one of the big stories of the NRA were the protests.
It was.
What did you witness, and how was the weekend, by the way?
First of all, let me say this. I just confirmed I'll have Jenny J 1911 on a podcast tomorrow. This was her first trade show and everything. Okay, cool. So we'll be talking about this a lot, I'm sure, from her perspective, because being the first, I'm like, cool, I want to get you on and get your thoughts. But no, specifically, we can dive into that, the protest thing. So that was interesting. I mean, first of all, every time I would go out to smoke, they were out there, and And a lot of people were like, I don't know how you can stand out here with them over there hollering and everything. And I'm like, I tune it out, quite honestly.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not listening to that. I'm carrying on a conversation with somebody else that's standing there or whatever. I'm not really listening. So, Friday, it started out really thin. I would say by lunch, from about lunch Friday till about 3 o'clock or so on a Friday was the biggest crowd of protesters. It
Are we
was,
talking 1,000 or hundreds or what?
I
You
would
think?
say hundreds. I would say hundreds.
Okay.
Yeah, I would not say thousands, but I would definitely say hundreds at the peak, right?
Okay.
Then on Saturday, it was rather thin, picked up a little bit again around the lunchtime, maybe early afternoon area in that little slot. Not nearly what it was before. And then Sunday, it was just there was people over there, but at that point it was like dozens, when it was slow. It wasn't that. Now, one thing that was interesting is you would have so there were obviously vehicles designed just to make the block and drive down that street. That had, their, their anti-gun propaganda right on the signs, and every time they drive by, people would cheer. Well, there were apparently Texas redneck goofballs that decided that, hey, we're gonna poke the bear. And so every now and then you would have a big jacked up 4-wheel drive with Trump flags and Let's Go Brandon flags that would drive by, and they would lose their minds when those guys drove
I love
by.
it.
There was a couple of Harleys that drove by, with those kind of flags. And I don't like that. I think it's dumb to drive around.
But in that scene,
it was funny.
That's awesome.
It was funny to me, I will say this, and I said it in the video I dropped today, kind of covering in realm. That's really the only video you're going to get from me. Was, I talked to some law enforcement as much as I was. There was literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds from the Texas DPS troopers to, Houston PD that were there. I don't know their politics, the vast majority of them, but they were calm, collected. They were, doing what they were supposed to do, which is keep the peace, right? Make sure nothing got out of hand. They were doing that, stand out there in the heat all day, whatever. And, I told many of them, thank you, for, spending your Memorial Day weekend out here doing this. I was like, I got to think that a lot of you're getting paid overtime. Yeah. But you probably weren't scheduled, to work this. You probably, and you're missing time you could spend with your family or whatever. So thanks. Don't have to know their politics. And so, I was talking with some of them and they said, well, Houston has some really strict regulations on what kind of signs you can have and where you can have your protests. They had barricades set up, of course, on the street and other things. And I will say this, for the most part, the protester crowd did exactly what, slow clap for them. You can disagree with them all day long, but they had their, peaceful assembly. There's nothing wrong with standing over. Now, some of them had signs that said F you too, or go F yourself or whatever. There's Pat Hurst, by the way.
Yeah. Let's take this real quick. Armed Citizen Podcast. Who we got? Hello? Okay, we're going to go ahead and exit off that. Go ahead.
Maybe
Sorry about that.
Maybe you got a butt dial. I hadn't seen Pat in the chat, so that was kind of weird.
I haven't seen Pat in the chat either. I got a butt dial on the hotline.
Maybe I got a butt dial with Pat. Who knows? But and then they occasionally you get one that would holler something that was off color.
Stand by.
Maybe they say something this time.
Armed Citizen Podcast. Who's this? Hello? And goodbye. All right, I'm not going to answer it next time.
Does it show the number when it comes up?
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely not someone who's trying to call into the show, I don't think.
Okay, may not be. And the problem is
it's the same area code as my business number. My business number is not my local number. So yeah.
Well, with the topic, it could be somebody just trolling.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay.
So yeah, there was some.
I don't mind people calling in and wanting to talk about an opposite view that we have. That's great. I'm all cool with that as long as it stays civil,
right,
and all that. So let me ask you this real quick. Trying to paint a picture here. Obviously you weren't.
Obviously.
Is there any other way? I mean, let's just,
Well, obviously we won't be able to do anything in purple because you like the grape too much.
There are no purple crayons that can be used because they've been consumed already. Yes.
Right.
And some strawberry. Anyways.
Nice. Mandatory carry says that was him and he couldn't hear anything. That's weird.
Oh, okay. Well, call again, bro, because we could hear background noise.
Yeah, we heard your butt dial for sure.
Yeah, we heard the butt dial for sure. Anyways, so when the protests were happening, and I know that you weren't outside very much, and when you weren't paying a whole lot of attention. Gee, I just realized how.
I was outside plenty. You know how I work.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is, I'm sure you weren't out there specifically for the protest.
No, I was not.
Man, my fingers are so crooked. My God. Okay. Anyways, I know that I've broken all of them eventually throughout my life. But I just realized that, my God, they're nasty, crooked, whatever. Were the protests? I'm sorry, that was really weird. Were the protests more about the school happening, or were they more NRA related? Were they Trump related? What was the vibe of? Was it all a mixture of anything?
So I'm going to say it was mostly about the school thing. It's about what we're talking about tonight, right? It's about keeping kids safe. We don't want to see kids die, period.
No one wants to see that.
We all agree. We all agree on that.
That's the thing. They think that because we're pro-gun, we're pro-murder. I mean, come on.
Well, that's like I just led this off with by saying the guy that was hollering, how could you be pro-gun and pro-life, right? Well, first of all, you're assuming a bunch of crap. A lot of the signs, you would read them, and it's like they contradicted themselves so much. Like one would say, how is it said something to the effect of how is gun control taking away your rights or something like that, or how is protecting kids taking away your rights, I think is what it said. Something of that nature. And then literally 2 signs over says repeal the Second Amendment. Well,
what?
Make up your mind. Either you're saying you're not trying to take away my rights, or you're trying to say you want to repeal the Second Amendment, which guarantees my right. So it's like, make up your mind. And then, like I said, there were some signs that were super off color. A lot of them were just had printed pictures of, I'm guessing the ones that were murdered there in Uvalde, and it said, some of them said, what would you do if it was your kids? And my deal is, well, here in Texas, and that was in Texas, that school district had the option to employ the guardian or the marshal plan and allow exactly what we're talking about here for teachers to carry if they want to, allow teachers to carry, not force them. So, it's just a lot of their points were just silly. And I'll tell you another thing that I noticed on Sunday that aggravated me. So when we talk about the white redneck old guys, right, that the NRA gets the rap for a lot of times, and the gun community and culture in general, we know that there are plenty of all colors and shapes and sizes and sexual persuasions and everything else. But one thing that I did notice, so there were some people, depending on where they parked, they had to cross the street by the protesters. And this is where I was telling you earlier, private conversation where we parked. We didn't have to deal with that. We could go a skywalk directly into the building, which was great. But there were a lot of people that had to come and go that way. Now, the police, again, they're law enforcement. They had barricades set up. They were, they were doing a wonderful job with handling the situation. Kudos to those law enforcement folks that were down there. But I would notice when white guys would walk through, they would holler disparaging stuff at them, right? Like coming and going across the street. But and there was a lot of black folks Asian, and any and every other color down there, enjoying the show and all the cool things inside, and just having fun visiting with people and everything else. When somebody of color would walk by, those protesters said nothing, and I found that really interesting. It's worth pointing out because it was so. It was just so in your face. It was so obvious. And I'll tell you another thing that was so obvious. The very first day before it got busy, there was a guy, had him a little bullhorn, and he was hollering weird stuff through the bullhorn, right? I don't know what he was hollering, but it was stuff I didn't agree with, and it halfway didn't make any sense. And then I got to notice him. And the only time he would holler is when like there were chicks walking by him.
Okay.
That's the only time he would holler. He would holler, and then you would see him having a conversation with some chicks that had walked by, right? And the next time he goes to hollering, and you notice, and there's some chicks, like different chicks, standing beside him, and then you'd notice he would quit hollering, and he'd be talking with the chicks, and I'm like, yeah, I know why you're there, buddy. It ain't to protest.
No.
Good move. He got skills.
It's to be seen protesting.
That dude got game, baby. Got game. Yeah.
So this should piss anybody off, but if it does, it might mean something. So take that as it is. Same goes to a lot of people that go to church.
Oh yeah.
A lot of people go to church to be seen at going to church. Not necessarily caring about going to church. They just want to be seen at church. So that pisses you off. Maybe you need to look at yourself a little bit. Just saying.
Yep. A lot of people that go to the NRA show.
Mandatory care says, "Hey, hold up, that guy's brilliant."
Right.
Now, he did have a question. He was trying to call. He says, "Just a quick question: if your school staff, it's more of a point and interesting." He says, if your school staff aren't responsible enough to be trusted with a gun or whatever to defend, how can you trust them with your kids for 8-ish hours a day? Now, I understand the sentiment. I think it's a little bit different, but that's not necessarily a bad point. If we trust you to have our kids for 8 hours a day, we should be able to trust that you could protect them if we're going to entrust their safety to you for 8 hours a day. And that's just teachers. This is talking staff, faculty, administration. Yeah. I mean, I get that. Interesting point there. But yeah, G23 says up in Oregon, it's up to the school district if they want to, they have CCW. So ours was CCWs, plus 120 hours of training, specific type training.
Aussie out there, the new Aussie. I don't know what we call him.
Yeah,
the post Black Sabbath Aussie.
Right? Yeah, we'll call. I guess we can call Aussie. Like they used to do with the Travises. You have Travis, the other Travis, and the other Travis. Travis. So this will be the other Aussie.
The other Aussie. That's good.
The other Aussie.
Yeah, I mean, he was bringing up like that something about Texas was trying to do. Okay, first of all,
mandatory armed.
If you're paying attention too heavily to what politicians propose, you're paying attention to the wrong things, because a politician can propose whatever the heck they want to propose. I can tell you right now that mandatory carry for teachers in the school never happen. I don't think in any state, let alone here. Now, with that being said, the reason for that is there's many reasons, but the let's just say the reason from a politician legislative standpoint is we already have two plans, as I said earlier, in Texas that the school districts can adopt. They can adopt the Marshall Plan or the Guardian Plan, both of which requires training for those teachers, subsidies, and some other things for those teachers to get trained that want to do it. The whole idea of mandatory, don't get freaked out if some far right-wing politician proposes that. The same way I don't think you should get freaked out if some far left-wing politician proposes some asinine gun control measures. Likely they're not going to get passed. What we got to pay attention to.
Grandstanding for their constituents to get reelected. So they can go and say, hey, I supported and I proposed and I wrote this bill. It didn't even get out of committee, bro. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm just Carrie out there.
He says,
me. Never going to happen. We'll see, Clover.
Yeah.
Ozzy
says his friends call him
Texas?
Ozman. Ozman's what they call him. So we'll call him Ozman.
Ozman. So I can't speak for mandatory
we're gonna
carry.
call him Wizard. Fuck that. We're gonna call him Wizard, the Wizard of Ozzy.
That's cool.
So Wizard.
Of Ozzy? I like Wizard. That's nice. But to mandatory carry that says, we'll see. That's fine. I'm good with that. But I'll also say that I've been plugged in and involved in Texas politics for many, many decades. And so you can have your opinion, but are you plugged in and involved in Texas politics and know what's going on? So,
well, this is not a Texas thing. I'll go out and I'll be fairly confident.
Well, I can't speak to other states what they might do, but
no.
Why I said certainly in Texas.
But I can say this: I don't suspect that any state will ever pass a law that mandates teachers carry.
No, I don't. Yeah.
On the flip side, I don't suspect there'll be many states that say that by law, teachers will never be allowed to carry either.
This is true too. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I said, Texas, I mean, there's no reason. So that's why I say it's never going to happen. Absolutely. Here, there's no reason to mandate it. The school district and the teachers can already do it. And you got to talk about the mentality of the vast majority of Texans that are teachers. There are more than enough of them, I think, that would step up if the district, and that's the crux of the matter is the district stepping up and implementing those plans where they can. I think there's plenty of teachers that are willing to do it if the district kicks in and allows it.
Yeah. Mandatory says, I am a national global figure. On the other hand, I'm not normal either. I say that all the time. He is. Yeah. I love the dude. He ain't normal.
Here's the thing. We're not supposed to be normal. Absolutely. The whole idea of this great country is we're all individuals. And if we're all individuals, there is no normal. So there you go.
The hardest part of America is understanding and accepting. Understanding is easier than accepting. Understanding and accepting the idea that someone that has 180-degree opposite thoughts that you have about how things should happen has the same right to voice their opinion as you do. Mm-hmm. That's what makes us great. We're able to do that.
Well, and you need to have, I don't know how many people listen to it. Not a lot, because it's a 2-hour conversation. But I dropped a podcast on Friday. It was a 2-hour or something conversation with Dave from Blue Collar Logic, the Blue Collar Logic channel. Now, he's a Californian. I think just from knowing him and listening to him, knowing his channel for a couple of years now, and having, of course, the 2-hour conversation with him, I find him more of a middle of the road guy. That one of those that really doesn't know what he doesn't know because he doesn't have that education, that experience, that perspective. Yeah. And it was a wonderful conversation, but Absolutely. You have to be willing to enter into that where you're not comfortable, right? Like, I did not know what to expect going into that conversation. And I think it was a great conversation. Neither one of us manipulated the conversation to our benefit. Sure. I think he made a couple things. I don't know that he said anything that made me think. Well, let me back up. He did. He said things that made me think about my response. And then in my response, I said things that made him think about what he had just said. Right. So it was a whole conversation of kind of making each other think. Right. I don't know that it changed opinions or it changed stances.
That's not a bad thing. That's exactly what they're supposed to happen.
But what people will say is, well, there's no use in having a conversation with that person because they don't agree like me. Well, here's the thing. I'm not going to change their mind, right? We hear that a lot. Well, why would I talk to them? I'm not going to change their mind. Well, it depends on the setting. So if you're talking to them in private, okay, that has a little bit of validity maybe. But if you're talking with them online in a chat, in a forum like this, a podcast, or in a group setting, where there's a crowd or people around you, that conversation might change somebody else's mind in the crowd, correct?
Yep.
So there's
Yep.
value to having those conversations. I agree.
Yeah, because we talk about planting the seed, and it's not necessarily just planting a seed for that one individual. It's planting a seed to anyone that hears that conversation, and all that. G, we're literally getting ready to get out of here. Do you have anything you want to bring up real quick before we jump out?
Oh, thanks. Sorry for that. I just saw the link and I heard you throw it out before, but I only have a limited time between when it gets real hot, or when it is real hot, and when it gets dark. So I was outside.
Yeah, no worries. So we're at the 2-hour mark. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go and have a chat in the back room, and all of that. But I want to give Clover and G a couple of minutes each to maybe talk about some of the projects they're working on before we get out of here. G, anything that you're working on right now that you want to tell people, or where they can find you if they want to check your stuff out? That sounded bad.
Live every midnight Eastern over on the Daily Gun Show, and then Clover joins us on Saturdays for Ask Gun Questions. Other places throughout the week.
There you go. Clove, if you were to do anything, what would some of that be, and where should they look for you?
So, try to rattle this off real quick. Mentioned the podcast with Dave.
You should have your elevator speech done by now.
I know. So I mentioned earlier all of this, but just in case, somebody could have been getting coffee or popcorn or whatever at this point. Friday podcast dropped with Dave from Blue Collar Logic. If you've got 2 hours to listen to a conversation, I think that's a good one to listen to. It could help you hone your skills with talking with people that are, at least people that are indifferent, right? Not solidified so much in their thoughts and opinions. Tomorrow,
he was I like guns, but
yeah,
he wasn't anti-gun. He wasn't pro-gun necessarily. He's I like guns.
Well,
but
it's like I said earlier, he was one of them guys that kind of didn't know what he didn't know type thing.
Right.
Yeah,
sure.
And he wasn't worried about it. He wasn't trying to push his opinion on nobody. He just was content, understanding I didn't know everything, which is not dangerous or bad. It's not on our side either. It's just there. So yeah, it was an interesting.
Yeah, right. So anyway, today dropped the only kind of footage video that'll be from NRA. So go check that out. The NRA 2022 or NRAM 2022 in less than 5 minutes. So 4 minutes, 46 seconds, I think. Tomorrow, hope to have Jenny J 1911 on. As I said, her first industry event at all to go to. So hopefully have a good conversation with her from a kind of a newbie's perspective on, how everything went, what she thought. And then we'll have a video drop. Patreon, obviously Patreon and YouTube channel members already have access, but we'll drop a video Friday. We did go to the Concealed Carry Fashion Show, and a few of the ladies from the DC Project gave about a 10-minute presentation. I thought that was really good. So that'll drop probably Friday, and then normal content resumes next week, maybe.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for going on, Clove. I want to thank my sheriff, Chris Brown, who was here for the first little over hour 15 minutes. Brought a great perspective into different things. But thanks to him for coming on. And G came on the last few minutes. I appreciate you coming on. We'll be able to talk here a little bit on the after chat. But yeah, thanks everyone for coming. If you guys are out there watching a replay or listening to a podcast, go ahead and utilize the comment section. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and make them. You can say whatever you want. I may not answer. I may not like what you say, but you absolutely have the right under certain things to say what you want. If I think that they are inappropriate, then they will get taken care of. But yeah, have fun with the discussion. It's okay to have a discussion in the comments as well. It's as good a place as any to have a discussion. So utilize the comment section out there as well. Thanks for everyone who watched live. Appreciate you guys. I hope you guys were entertained. More importantly, I hope we had some good conversations and you might have gotten some information that maybe you didn't know before. And for those that were spreading information about where they're from and all that, I appreciate that as well. So I'm glad hopefully everybody made it through Memorial Day weekend unscathed. Hope everyone enjoyed being around their family and friends, and unless you were like me and had to work all damn weekend, but it was fun. It is what it is. But thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next week. Semper Fi.